Good morning, everyone. Another morning before work. Another CALLOUS Draft League. Not to be confused with CALLOUS Draft Duel. One of these. And due to recent DEI initiatives here on the CALLOUS Narrates YouTube channel, I want to include all the colors. So we have already covered red versus orange and blue versus green. So now we've got players representing the other two teams, pink and purple. Or I guess in this case, player one, Cabbage being purple and Freeday being pink. For those of you who haven't heard of these guys, yeah, nobody has. But Cabbage I think is a draft player, which is not the community that I'm like super duper intertwined with. So I think people know the guy even if I don't know him personally, and seems competent, but who knows? Freeday I know a little bit better. He's mostly well known as the guy who can't crack 100 on my trivia bot. He goes 50 plus pretty regularly, but just can't quite get over the hump, even though he's playing in casual mode with the other chumps rather than the real man's .q. But that is a story for another day. For now, more important than anything, we've got a draft. Yeah. So as randomly chosen, as you guys know, fair is fair, random is random, we've got Cabbage as our player one today, and then of course that would make Freeday our player two. And as you know, player one, Cabbage, is going to have the first ban, with which he's going to remove Tyranitar. Fair enough. Yeah, if I weren't first picking it, which by the way I totally might, but if I weren't first picking it, then I would get rid of T-Tar too. Seems fine to me. He must have something else in his mind that he envisions himself taking first overall. Freeday, and this must just be a generalized ban. It can't possibly have anything to do with the T-Tar unless TSS, I guess. But he's going to remove Blissey, which is interesting. And then meta is going to go from Cabbage, just taking two general, very proactive, smash you in the face kind of threats. Again, he must have something else in mind that he himself wants to first pick if he's making these bans. If Freeday were to go with the general Skarmory ban here, which is probably the most likely scenario, I'm not actually sure what that leaves Cabbage with. Does he take Lax or Gar or Salamence or something to that effect? But interestingly further is that Freeday is actually going to allow the Skarm through. He would rather not play against Salamence. So a lot of the premier aggressive, usually physical, but obviously they can all run mixed sets, but generally speaking, T-Tar meta, Salamence, physical threats, they are all going to be removed from the pool very early on. So Skarm is wide open for Cabbage, which the vast majority of people here would not hesitate to insta-grab, but he's going to go a different way. And this perhaps shows his background with more traditional draft, like Emerald Open or a draft league that uses that kind of point structure and has Raikou, which is his pick, at the top of the food chain, versus this format where I think it would be hard to argue that Raikou is not a top 5 Pokemon, might honestly not even be a top 10 Pokemon. I would rate it outside of the top 10 personally. I don't think Raikou is bad, and certainly the fact that Blissey got banned out makes it better, but I think if he wanted Raikou, he could have taken something else here. Again, Skarmory comes to mind immediately, and probably still gotten Raikou a few picks down the line. But like I said, I assume that this player has little or no experience or exposure with this format, so I don't want to critique him too hard. I just want to call the draft as I see it. I don't think he's a dummy for making this pick. I think he's just probably an Emerald Open player rather than someone familiar with this format. And part of it is Freeday, whether his opponent is familiar with this format or not, because Freeday is nevertheless going to have to adapt to what his opponent is throwing at him, whether or not I think it's optimal. So we'll see how he chooses to respond. There's no way in hell that Freeday is ever going to let Skarm back after Cabbage let it go, so clearly that's going to be one of his picks. And the question just becomes, what does he want to do with it? Does he want Gar? Does he want Zapdos? Does he want Snorlax? There's still several good options. Celebi is on the board. He's going to opt for Skarmory and Zapdos. Hard to fault that. Zapdos in the conversation, top 5 Mon without a doubt. very splashable, generalist, can be full-on offense, full-on defense, anywhere in between, can sub-pass, can toxic stall. Zapdos does it all. It's a great poke. It's one of the very best leads. You can throw it on any team, and you can't go too far wrong. So a very safe early pick. Though of note, neither Skarmory nor Zapdos are all that good into Raikou. But it's so early on that it isn't really about counter picks. Nevertheless, noteworthy that very, very, very early on here, the Raikou looks good. And perhaps building a bit off of the Raikou, he's going to now take what I would consider definitely an early Swampert, and then he's going to grab a Celebi as well. So we very well may be looking, it's certainly by the way that he's drafting early on, makes it appear to me like this is either a draft player or an OU player or both who's still very much in the mindset of traditional draft or of OU. Because these picks make a lot of sense in OU. Swampert and Celebi, great duo, great defensive core. Furthermore, he's helping out his Raikou as well. These are two things that both could be difficult for it to break through. So he's kind of building around his first pick. Again, Celebi I'm okay with. Swampert I don't think is optimal here. It's hard for me to leave Gengar, Snorlax, Aerodactyl, those kind of things all floating out there. Starmie is still out there. It's hard for me to think that Swampert is better than those Pokemon in this format. But he might be in an OU-esque mindset, and he might be building around his first pick. So I get what he's doing. It's unconventional. This is not usually the way the format's played. But hell, maybe it'll be better than the norm. Maybe we'll learn something from watching Cabbage. I can't wait to see him proceed. On the flip side, Freeday keeping it way more traditional here. Going to go with Snorlax, Aerodactyl. Hard to argue with those picks. The reason I think that he's avoiding things like Gengar, Starmie, Milotic, that are all super duper viable here, is the fact that he doesn't want to get too greedy and push it too much against the Raikou. So with these two picks, he's taking two Pokemon that are good against Raikou. Now granted, he is also taking Snorlax into Celebi. Not that I would pass Snorlax back here, because I wouldn't. But both the Lax and the Arrow are going to give him a little something against Raikou. He doesn't want to push it too much and let himself be too vulnerable to that poke. And these are just two of the best Pokemon remaining, so I'm cool with it. What I would like to see Cabbage do here is take probably Gengar and Starmie, but I can also see Starmie and Milotic. I definitely would not pass up on Starmie in this position if I were Cabbage, especially with the Skarmory on the other side. Starmie's one of the best pokes in this to begin with, and when you know you're against Skarm, I definitely would grab Starmie here. But Cabbage sees it differently, and he's going to take two good picks, just not the ones that I would make. He's going to go Gengar, Milotic, and these picks are totally fine, but I don't know. I think Starmie, for me, is the most important one, actually. Maybe you can value Gengar over Starmie. So I guess my picks here are probably Gengar and Starmie, and I let the Milotic float back, especially when you've already got a good Bulky Water in Swampert, and when Bulky Waters, the pool is pretty deep. If you really want to water, you can probably live with letting Milotic go and just grab Vaporeon or Blastoise or Slowbro or Porygon 2, which I'm going to refer all tournament long. I'm going to refer to it as a Bulky Water. I understand it isn't a water type. It's a Bulky Water for the context of this format. So I think the Bulky Water pool is deep. Milotic is obviously a good Pokemon, though it doesn't stand out particularly against what Freeday currently has. But for me, I think Gengar Starmie was the better pick here, rather than Gengar Milo. I don't hate the Milo, but I think the Starmie is both better against Freeday's team, fits better with what Cabbage has, which is very offensive-minded at this time, and crucially, against the Skarmory on the other side, I wouldn't push it too much in regard to cheating on spinners. And I think Freeday very well may end up banning some spinners or taking spinners relatively soon. Fori immediately sticking out as being something very good that's remaining. Wouldn't even be surprised here to see Freeday take Starmie plus Fori. It'd be hard to argue with, honestly. That very well might be what I would do here. But he's going to go a different way. So the Starmie is obvious. There's no way that you can pass that here. Got to grab that, and I don't think Cabbage should have allowed that to happen. But the other pick is interesting. This is not usually a first rounder. I like me some Jolteon, but I envision it more as a second round pick. This is a bit early for my taste, probably. But he's still giving the respect that Raikou is due. He's still giving it that respect. He's taking a Volt Absorber very, very early on, and that's going to be an additional tool against the Raikou. Furthermore, Jolteon is obviously good against Milotic. It's always good against the Starmie that he has, so it's a bit of a protection pick. It's decent against the Zapdos that he has and the Skarmory that he has. And it forces a speed tie, keeps the Aerodactyl honest, and makes it not go adamant, not cheat on speed by virtue of potentially being max speed itself. So this pick I actually think is really heads up and really in the moment, because it's actually really, really good against Freeday's team, against Skarm, Zap, Aerodactyl, Starmie. So I think that part of this, even though it is only okay against Cabbage, is that it's good against him as well. So he's giving himself a little Raikou padding, a little bit extra against Milotic, but also protecting his own stuff. Now, granted, if he had let that float, would Cabbage take it right now? Probably not. So there's definitely an argument to be made, and I don't hate this argument, that instead Freeday should have gone Starmie Fori, risked the Jolteon being taken because Cabbage very likely would not have taken it, and then simply ban it out in the next round. I think I probably lean that way a little bit more, but I don't hate the Jolteon pick, even though I think he could have gotten away with not taking Jolteon here. So back to Cabbage to close out the opening round. He's going to opt for, again, not valuing spinners. I really feel like Fori should have been grabbed here, but he's going to take it a different direction with Hariyama and Dragonite. I love me some Dragonite, as you all know, but I don't think it's better than Fori, nor do I think it's better than Fori here in this specific context. So for me, Fori should have been one of the picks if I'm Cabbage. I like Dragonite. I don't think it's a bad alternative choice, and it's so customizable that it could threaten literally every single Pokemon on Freeday's team with a super effective attack, depending on what you want it to do. So I definitely like me some D-Knight, but I feel like Fori should have been one of the grabs in this position. Nevertheless, his other pick is going to be Hariyama. Again, don't like it better than Fori, but I like it fine. Certainly loading up on fighters when we know it is going to be a sandless match, and Meta's gone, and Skarm is on the other side. He's going to have to start accruing some combo answers, some combo packages to Snorlax. Certainly, Celebi and Gengar are pieces of that puzzle, but neither one is good enough on its own. And Hariyama, again, a piece to that puzzle, but not good on its own. At some point, other than the Gengar, he's going to want to pick up some proper normal resistances, such as Regirock or Registeel, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Again, I think these are two general good mons, and his strategy seems to be just take general good stuff and not really focus too much on what his opponent's doing or trying to counter team or what have you, and that's fine. For a beginning player who doesn't necessarily understand or care about the little nuances of trying to counter team the specific thing that the opponent is doing, he very well might just be focusing on his own stuff, himself, stuff that he's comfortable with, generally safe things, and just letting it play out from there. And I'm okay with that for someone doing this format for the very first time. So swinging it over to the second round of bans, beginning with Freeday. This makes sense to me. Steelix is generally picked as a Zapdos or an Aerodactyl counter. He's got both, so he definitely does not want to play against that, and it would hose the Jolteon as well. So all sorts of reasons that from Freeday's seat you would not want Steelix to be picked on the other side. A sensible ban, in my opinion. Cabbage is going to take away Alakazam. He may look at this board and view it as, I don't really have much in the way of a special wall. Raikou or Celebi could be built to an extent, and I guess Hariyama as well. These mons could all be built somewhat to be a special wall, but neither of them are incredible at it. Noteworthy, all the Regis are still floating, and that's not normally the case. Regice, Registeel, Regice in particular, I think is just still criminally undervalued in this and absolutely should get scooped up ASAP if it makes it through bans. But in the special walling department, by virtue of the lax, and to a lesser extent the Zapdos, Freeday currently with the advantage, and Cabbage probably doesn't feel super comfortable going against those fast, hard-hitting special attackers, hence the Alakazam ban. And Freeday is going to follow the same logic as before. I'm typing in Freeday. Freeday did not pick Freeday. Freeday picked in Registeel. Same concept. Going to be good against Lax. Going to be good against Aerodactyl. It's fine against the Electrics, but the main thing, just like with the Steelix, Steelix really does hose them. it really beats all of Zapdos, Snorlax, Aerodactyl, and Jolteon. So Registeel is like mini Steelix here. It's not as good against the Electrics as Steelix is, obviously with the ground typing, but it's still definitely good against Lax, good against Aero, and it's okay against the Electrics. He's just being consistent. The squad that he's drafted has some pretty clear counter picks that Cabbage may or may not have taken advantage of, but Freeday is not going to let him even have the opportunity to do that by utilizing his ban phase in, I think, a sensible way. So Cabbage here is going to opt for Heracross. Not clear what the thought process is. He does have a Celebi that gets eaten by it, but other than that, Heracross doesn't seem crazy scary for his team. But again, I don't know that he is at the level in this format yet where he's overly focusing on what his opponent's doing or about counters or about matchups or whatever. I think he might be playing it in a very straightforward way and simply removing mons that are good, removing mons that are threatening. So as such, okay, Heracross, one of the overall just general strong things available. It's got to go. There you go. There will be no Heracross in this particular matchup. So now Freeday is going to opt for Medicham and Fori. I think personally I like Regice and Fori here better. Again, I think Regice just really underrated and probably should go in the first round more often than not. But Medicham is a general strong pick. I don't know that it blows me away against Cabbage's team, but it's one of those mons that's just going to be good in the vast majority of matchups, regardless of what's on the other side. You can't go too far wrong. And then Fori, I definitely think, like I said, Cabbage, I think I would have grabbed that for sure over Hariyama or Dragonite, but in passing it back, Freeday is going to snipe that and take advantage. And he's got the two best spikers and maybe two of the three best spinners. Claydol's still floating, Cloyster's still floating, but a clear advantage in the spikes department for Freeday. Currently, Cabbage has neither a spiker or a spinner and is not involved in that war just yet. And Cabbage is going to continue to not be involved. He's going to go a different way. He's going to opt for Charizard and Dugtrio. So let's start with the Dugtrio, as always, and let me explain, as always, why this Pokemon blows. You don't trap Skarmory, Zapdos, Aerodactyl, not good. You don't really trap Fortress, not good. Jolteon can outspeed you and Baton Pass away, not good. So right now you are trapping maybe a sleeping unboosted Lax, maybe a weakened Starmie, and maybe a non-reversal or non-substitute Medicham. Woo! Yeah! Dugtrio blows. Don't like the pick. Charizard. Yeah, I mean, hey, a Fori just got taken on the other side, so that's one reason to do it. Skarmory, obviously, threatened by it. Focus Punch possibility on Lax, reasonable. The Electrics don't love coming into fire attacks. Charizard seems fine. Not good against Aerodactyl or Starmie, but I mean, what Pokemon at this point is going to be good against every single Pokemon on the other side? I don't really know that that's a thing. So, yeah, he's just going to take a generally threatening Mon. I like me some Zard, and he's obviously, based on these picks, looking like he's in a more offensive mindset, and that's fine, too. These are certainly two offensive Mons, so, sure, Charizard and Dugtrio. Straightforward enough. On the other side, here is the Regice finally. As I said, I think this is a missed opportunity for both players, and it is being undervalued, and it should have been taken before. But it's going to be a very nice, I would consider it late, but we're not even halfway through, I guess. But late pick for Freeday, for sure. Regice, I think, is a round one pick. So grabbing it now, very good. It's just good in general. It doesn't really matter what's on the other side. But as far as the specifics of this matchup, reasonable against Raikou, especially if it runs like S-Toss or Psych Up or what have you. Celebi, obviously, it's good. Gengar, it's good. Milo, it's good. Dragonite, you can one-hit KO very easily. Love me some Regice, and it is yet another special wall that Freeday is going to grab that's going to even further deprive Cabbage of good options, and he's going to have to figure out something quick. I don't know if it's going to be an Umbreon or a Ludicolo or whatever, but the window to grab viable special walls from Cabbage's end is closing pretty quickly, so he's going to have to make some kind of adjustment and figure it out. As far as the Moltres, I mean, anytime the opponent's got a Celebi, I'm down with Moltres, but it doesn't blow me away into this particular matchup. The Charizard and the Moltres kind of stare each other down and do nothing, but Zard has the potential to break it more in that it can have physical attacks, it can have Belly Drum, what have you. Dugtrio obviously can have Rock Slide. Dragonite I think is okay. Probably favored in most cases against Moltres. Hariyama, Thick Fat, no problem. Milotic walls it pretty much all day, even if it has like HP Grass. Raikou obviously beats Moltres. So yeah, I mean, general good Mon, sure. I think I personally prefer, I think I like a Gyarados there better than Moltres, looking at the team on the other side, especially when you are the Zapdos drafter. That probably would have been my pick in that situation, but yeah, he sees it differently. Moltres, never bad, just doesn't blow me away in this specific matchup. So Cabbage is finally going to get involved in the Spiker Spinner situation. He's another player who I guess values Cloyster more than Glalie, which I think for a traditional draft player or for an OU player, a lot of them are going to see it that way. Among the people who have actually played this format, the consensus very much seems to be the other way, that Glalie is the superior option, which I agree with. But hey, Glalie doesn't spin, so if he's trying to kill two birds with one stone, he does in fact have a Spiker Spinner now. Perhaps this Cloyster and this Gengar will be on the same team. Miltank, Thick Fat, sure, I could see that. He did just take Regice and Moltres, so Fire Ice Resist could be handy. It's also a Heal Bell user, potentially his third Heal Bell user, in both the Celebi and the Dragonite also having it. So between that and the fact that Celebi has Natural Cure, he should be pretty set up to be fine against Status at this point and shouldn't have to worry about it from here on out. So it's nice this early on to be largely padded in that department and just not have to think about it for the rest of the draft. This could be a little bit of an early Miltank. I think it's like a good Mon and a Glue Mon, but not amazing. For me, as far as power level, I generally view Miltank as closer to a round 3 Mon than a round 2 Mon. But I don't hate the pick. He did just take two things that are hosed by Thick Fat. And again, he's just going general safe, general good, general sturdy. Miltank fits the bill. I'm okay with it. Now Freeday here is going to grab double water. He's going to grab Vaporeon and Gyarados. I think getting pretty crazy value here. The Gyarados is the pick that I liked last time over the Moltres, which isn't what he did, but it doesn't matter because it comes back and he gets it anyway. And then he's going to add I guess a second bulky water if you want to count Starmie. Going to grab Vaporeon into the mix. Probably the best one remaining, save P2. And he feels most comfortable having that on the team, having waters on every team. He's got it lined up pretty well. Freeday is in a position where he's looking like he's probably going to have a bulky water or an equivalent and a special wall on all three teams, which is where you want to be. So he's having a pretty solid, evenly distributed draft. Cabbage is not going that way. He's just going general aggro all the way across the board. Doesn't seem too concerned about walls or spinners or defensive mons or really even bulky waters. He does have the Milotic and the Swampert, but he seems very aggro focused as a whole based on his picks. And Cabbage here is going to go for Sceptile and Dusclops, so really set now that he's taken that Cloyster. Whether it's with the Gar or with the Dusclops, he feels very strongly about wanting to protect any spikes that he does manage to get down, hence Dusclops. Pretty good at stopping Starmie and Fori. Claydol still hasn't been taken, interestingly, but he's going to opt for the Dusclops here, and it might randomly be okay against like Zapdos or Lax or Jolteon as well, depending on the set. Sceptile doesn't blow me away here. It's okay. Leech Seeders against Lax, always decent. And then obviously it's good against like Starmie, for example, but it's not good against Regice, against Moltres, against Gyarados unless you have Thunder Punch, against Aerodactyl, against Medicham. I don't know. Sceptile doesn't blow me away here. There might be some element if he doesn't want to play against it, just like with the Alakazam, where he knows that he himself is a bit vulnerable on the special side, but he doesn't seem to be too focused throughout this on counter picking. I think he's largely just focusing on what he can do to add to his own team. And yeah, I mean, again, just sticking with it, just the general offensive mindset, maybe with a sprinkle of get spikes down and protect them on top. But generally, Cabbage seems to want to be the aggressor in the matchup, and with the way that it's shaking out, Mon versus Mon, it does seem that Cabbage is going to be playing the aggro role in probably all three of the matchups, unless something really, really changes in the third round of picks. But Cabbage, I think, is about to be in for a rude awakening. Welcome to this format. This is a perfect example of why this format is so different than traditional draft. with the Gengar already on board and having just added the Dusclops, he is going to be in for a rude awakening when his opponent is going to take both Houndoom and Umbreon in one fell swoop. And that is a pretty backbreaking way to end the second round. That is going to make both the Gengar and the Dusclops so much worse. Those are huge pickups, I think, for Freeday. That's a great response. The ability to remove the Ghost, too, is going to possibly let him run a set like Curse, EQ, Rest on the Lax, which is not normally a thing because you're obligated to have Shadow Ball. But if he can clear away the Ghosts reliably, that set of Lax could end up being a real issue. But yeah, the Houndoom Umbreon all at once into the Gengar Dusclops is just flat-out counterpicking. And that's going to be tough for Cabbage. He's going to probably have to resort to running like Boomgar or something so he gets something out of it in the event where it gets trapped. And then, yeah, I mean, Dusclops is going to have to be the same deal. He's going to have to be like Focus Punch Dusclops or something to have a nasty surprise for these guys. Otherwise, it is also going to get trapped and eaten by these Pursuit users. So I think that was a really, really smart end-of-round pick. And Cabbage, upon seeing that, is probably like, oops. But yeah, this is a very much a live and learn kind of format, and this is going to be one of those times where he's going to learn from his mistakes and learn how his opponent might punish him. This is certainly punishing him. This is certainly very targeted at what has already been taken by Cabbage. So we're going to move over to Cabbage for the bans, and he wants Glalie to not be a part of this. Don't know that I personally agree with that ban. He must just not think it's a good poke and not want to take it, because keep in mind that after these bans, it's going to be Cabbage picking, not Freeday, so he could have just taken Glalie, which is something that I think is interesting, but yeah, I mean, it's a shitty NU, right? He must just not think it's good, must just not want to take it, so fair enough, there is no Glalie. Freeday, on the other hand, unsurprising, as the Skarmory drafter, is going to take Magneton out. The window was there for Cabbage. If he wanted it, it would have had to have been near the end of round 2, but he didn't, so there you go. Obviously not going to let him grab it in round 3. Magneton is removed from the pool. Taking out yet another Spiker for Cabbage. I'm not clear. These don't feel like effective bans to me, because Freeday already has Skarmory, so like, he already has 2 really good Spikers. He doesn't really need another one. I mean, you're using 2 bans to like make it so he only, and I say only with like pretty intense air quotes, that he only has spikes on 2 of the 3 teams. And that also doesn't prevent him from just like taking a Quillfish, taking a Cacturn, taking a Roselia, whatever. If Freeday really, really, really wants spikes, he can still have them, but like I think what Freeday is going to do is just ignore him and be like, okay, spikes on 2 out of the 3 teams is good enough. I'm good. That's what I would do here. For Cabbage, I mean, if he doesn't ban these, he could just let them through, and he can literally just take both of these Mons, and then all of a sudden, in one fell swoop, it's Cabbage himself who has 3 Spikers, the Cloyster, the Glalie, the Smeargle. But now he just has the one, and he just, I don't think, is really hurting Freeday in any meaningful way. So these are unusual bans, in my opinion. And Freeday is totally fine with it. Like, all right, you're just going to ban the Spikers. All right, I'll just ban Spinners, and I'll just win the Spikes war. Let's just take Claydol out. I've got double electric, so I was going to ban him anyway. You just ban the Spikers. Works for me. I'm totally content. I'll just sit here with my 2 Spikers and 2 Spinners, and you just have the one bad spinner. Yeah, we're good. We're rolling. Fair deal. I think Freeday has no problem with those bans, and it doesn't really get it either. But what's really unusual here, very strange in my opinion, so after banning Glalie and Smeargle, which I think are just better, Cabbage is now going to select Quillfish. And he's also going to take Regirock, which is fine. But let's start with the Quillfish. It just doesn't... If you're trying to take a Spiker here, why do you ban Glalie and Smeargle? Those are both just better than Quillfish. I don't understand that. I'm okay with him taking a Spiker. That isn't the part that's weird to me. It makes sense. Like I said, he could have taken Glalie and Smeargle. I get why you want a Spiker here. I don't get why, if your plan is to take a Spiker, why you ban 2 good ones and then choose a worse one. That just doesn't make any strategic sense to me. Cabbage either like realized that he made a boo-boo and wanted to like walk it back ASAP, or he values Quillfish over Glalie and Smeargle, which I definitely don't agree with if that's the mindset that he's in. But yeah, he bans 2 Spikers and then takes, in my opinion, one that's worse than both of them. So the Quillfish is a real head scratcher for me. Don't really love this entire sequence of these bans and then these picks for Cabbage, but we'll let him carry on. As far as the Regirock, all the Regis are good. This is probably a bit later than he should go. It's good value. It's good against the Moltres, the Regice, the Aerodactyl, the Gyarados, the Houndoom. Plenty of opportunities for the Regirock to get value, but it's going to be good in general. It can boom. It can spread T-Wave. The Regis are all good in this format. Decent against Lax as a defensive wall. I'm cool with the Regirock. It's the Spiker and Quillfish sequence that has me really scratching my head. So Freeday on the other side. Sableye, interesting. And then he's going to take Jinx as well. Usually Sableye is grabbed against the Lax Drafter. That's not the case here. Perhaps he feared his opponent doing that, though I don't know that Cabbage was inclined to take a third Ghost here. I don't know if Sableye is going to be amazing for Freeday or not, but I think he realizes very clearly that he's largely on the defensive in most of these games, and is taking, I guess, the best Ghost available. He views it as better than Misdreavus, which it very well may be, so sure, fine and well. Jinx is a bit burst of offense here, a bit of an offensive splash. He might be able, with like Jinx and Jolteon and Medicham, whatever, to cobble together something of a viable offensive team here, and then have 2 defensive teams, so keep your eye on that, but Jolteon seems like a reasonable pick. I see plenty of ice weaknesses. I said Jolteon, I think I meant Jinx. Plenty of ice weaknesses on the other side. Celebi, Sceptile, Dragonite. It can also set up on some of this stuff like Dusclops or the Milotic or what have you. I'm cool with the Jinx. It's been consistently good in this format. Probably still a smidge underrated and definitely a very viable round 3 selection. So on the other side, going to see Arcanine and Breloom here. Fighters have not been nearly as big of a deal in this draft as they often are, but it's cool to see him pick one up here. He is looking at Regice and Lax on the other side, so like always going to be good. Likewise, Spore is always going to be good. Now granted, Houndoom does have Early Bird, so there's that, but like, are you really switching Houndoom into Breloom? You die a million times over if it just clicks Focus Punch or Sky Uppercut, so that's a pretty dangerous gamble. I don't know that Houndoom is really truly a counter to Breloom. And Breloom's dangerous. A lot of the stuff, like I said, for Freeday is on the slower side. Breloom does, in fact, outspeed the majority of what Freeday has, and frankly, the majority of the format. You'll always find an opportunity to get Breloom in and click Spore. Good pick as far as I'm concerned. Arcanine's fine as well. Looking at Skarm, Fori, Regice, Jinx, a lot of fire weaknesses, Intimidate, general good stats. Yeah, I'm okay with the Arcanine. I don't know if there was any particular reason for it, though it is good against Moltres, unless Moltres has Toxic. But yeah, I like me some Arcanine. General good mon, no objections there. On the flip side, we're going to see Flygon. That is almost certainly going to end up on one of these Spike squads, and then we're also going to see one of the best bulky waters in the format, good old Porygon 2. He happens to also be picking that into a Dugtrio player, which is just bonus points, but I don't think that's the primary reason to pick Porygon 2. It is just good in general. He also is taking away the Tracemon that could potentially hose the Flygon that he just took, since Porygon 2 could come in, Trace Levitate, and be immune to Earthquake. He's also protecting Vaporeon, because again, you could Trace Water Absorb and largely negate that poke. Same is true for Jolteon, could Trace Volt Absorb and largely negate that poke. So Porygon 2 is not only good in general, but it also could have been good as a pick against Freeday, and he doesn't want Cabbage to have the opportunity to do that, hence these picks. Cabbage is going to swing it back with Tauros and Crobat. Again, that aggressive mindset and that Emerald Open-esque mindset in taking these 2 Mons. These are 2 just generic, often choice-banded, just offensive Mons, just attackers. And we'll see how he uses them, but I mean, it probably is as simple as that. Tauros leads on one of the teams, Crobat's in the back on one of the teams. Voila! Neither one really wants to play against the Skarmory, so I don't know if this, like, mindless, physical, fast Choice Bander play is necessarily how I would try to crack through, but Freeday is not obviously going to be able to have Skarmory on every team, so I guess if you have enough of this kind of Mon, Skarm can't be everywhere all at once, and maybe you'll punch through. These are general okay Mons. I don't love Crobat so much. Tauros, I think, is a respectable round 3 pick, but we'll see if he gets any value out of these guys. The Crobat in particular, a little skeptical. Kind of think Crobat blows, but it's already better than some of the other things that I've seen picked in this, like Lanoon, or like Muck, or like, what was the other really weird one? Or Hitmontop. Blech. Give me that Crobat. So on the other side, we've got Camerupt. I'm into it. And also Armaldo. Camerupt's fine in this. It's much, much, much worse in both OU and Emerald Open. This is where it shines. This is the Camerupt format. In Emerald Open, if you know that Camerupt is coming, then you just load up a bunch of water attacks, HP Water, Surf, whatever, and it blows. And likewise in OU, maybe it's even a little bit better in OU now when we've reverted to just tournament players playing good old TSS again, but a few years ago when Zapdug was everywhere, when it was flavor of the month, flavor of the year really, when everybody was Zapdugging, obviously Camerupt is terrible in that situation because you switch Camerupt in, trying to hose Zapdos on a Thunderbolt or whatever, but instead it baton passes out to Dugtrio. Camerupt is dead. Cool Pokemon, bro. But I like it quite a bit in this format when you don't know when it's coming, and it's really not good to load up on a bunch of shitty HP Waters and then not play against the Camerupt. So I genuinely think it's pretty good in this. I think it's underrated and should be picked more. I think people have not explored the Camel enough in this, and that it's actually a pretty reasonable poke. Certainly a round 3 poke. Certainly not something I'm saying you should have taken earlier, but Camerupt, I do believe, is pretty good and is something people should give a more honest reevaluation of in this format. Also, I think you took Camerupt because he's going out of his way once again to protect his double electric. So any grounds that might blank the electric or anything that might force the electrics to have weird hidden powers, I think he's going out of his way to remove. And then Armaldo on the other end, typically picked into the Lax player, but he's taking a third spinner if he thinks that's important, so might as well pick up a spinner at the end. He could have gone for like Blastoise or Tentacruel or whatever, but it's double duty. He's picking up a third spinner, and he's also protecting his Lax, so he can't be counterpicked in that regard. Again, as I said throughout the draft, I don't know that Cabbage is necessarily in all that much of a counter-drafting mindset, but just in case, Freeday is going to play it safe and not let that happen. Rounding out the draft for Cabbage, he's going to go for Kingdra and Articuno. Articuno is another one that is definitely underappreciated and underutilized in this format. There's only so many damn good rock attackers. Articuno, I think, is a hell of a wall. By virtue of being a legendary, it's got really good base stats, just all the way around. It's just flat out stronger on just a stat for stat raw bulk basis than a large portion of the format. It gets useful moves like Roar, which is really good in draft. And of course, Ice Beam, Stab Ice Beam, and Heal Bell. I like me some Articuno. I think it's another one like Camerupt. It's actually probably better than Camerupt, but I really think Articuno also should get more of a look and is one of the things in this format yet to be adequately explored. Kingdra, sure. Generally, I think Freeday has the special walls to be able to handle it, but general good Mon and the kind of Mon that can just sweep the game at the end, and it also is a nice way to get ahead of really, really fast Mons like Aerodactyl and Jolteon, and then one-hit KO them. So as a way to turn the tables, and noting that Kingdra cannot be one-hit KO'd by Aerodactyl or Jolteon without a critical hit, perhaps Kingdra is just a little bit of padding to make those kind of matchups better. And finally for Freeday, wrapping up our draft, we've got a big angry bear. Generic pick, can't go too far wrong. Being the very last pick, it may or may not end up making a team, but it hits hard, it absorbs status, and kind of like a Kangaskhan pick or whatever, just a generic safe normal where you're not going to go too far around no matter what happens. Enter the Ursaring. So that is our draft, and like I said, I now have one thing of coverage for every team combo here. There are only the 6 teams, and I'll probably do more, but I don't want to make promises that I'm not absolutely certain that I can keep. But you guys can let me know what you think of the coverage so far. I would certainly appreciate if you hit the like and subscribe button. As far as this draft in particular, I might just be generally biased in my mindset towards players that have experience, but I'm going to stand by that. I think that this is one of those formats where having a few reps in it really is more valuable than having never done it before. I think it really matters, and I think you learn and get better every time you do this, but for someone who's done it before and understands it and has a good fundamental understanding of it versus someone who I believe has never done it before in Cabbage, I'm going to have to give the edge to Freeday here. I think he certainly had the better round 1 of the draft despite being player 2, which is unusual. I think he won the Spiker Spinner War. I think he won the Special Wall War. And I think that, like I said, Cabbage was largely focused on his own picks and drafting his own teams, which is a totally fine way to approach it as a first-time player. However, there were things, the Steelix, the Camerupt, the Armaldo, whatever, that maybe could have been punishing for Freeday that Cabbage never really took advantage of. And then Freeday did the good things, banning Magneton, banning Steelix, taking Camerupt. He did good things like that to make sure he doesn't get hosed by those Pokemon, but it never felt like Cabbage was overly thinking about those Mons or trying to hose him, and was rather just building 3 really aggressive teams, which is what he ended up with here. So you guys will have to let me know, but I'm going to give the advantage to Freeday in this particular draft. But we play the games for a reason. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Happens all the time. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Gonna go ahead and feed cats and shower and go to work and all that less exciting than Pokemon stuff. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching.